a few years ago, I was asked to join on a trip to the Maldives. Like, as in the freaking Maldives. I was living the dream. I was imagining like a blue ocean, a white beach, palm trees. During that trip, I even made a classical holiday selfie. It's a bit embarrassing, but let me show it to you anyway. The place I ended up was Tilafushi. Tilafushi is the garbage island of the Maldives, and it's a place where all trash is put and all hope is lost. Although you can still see a little bit of the white beach and the blue ocean. And I was there to set up a plastic recycling workspace, to build a little bit of this hope and to provide the tools to combat plastic recycling. Because while standing there on such an enormous pile of trash, I realized something essential. And for this, I need to take you back around 30 years ago, right around this time. When I grew up, I was an only child. I was always fascinated with the things around me. I could spend hours in front of the washing machine, touching all of the little buttons and trying to find out how it works. I loved just being by myself and inventing stuff. I was gluing little magnets to toys, and I was always curious to find out how these things were working. And later on in high school, I was making many more things, and I was realizing that there's so many skills around the world, but there's only just so little time. And in these school projects, we had to work in teams. And I quickly realized that with the three of us, we would be able to achieve much more than just 3 individuals. And especially in these school projects, it was essential to team up because there were super strict deadlines. You had to come up with something. Later on, when I went to my industrial design studies, I was actually making things. The projects became bigger, more real. I was actually making the next vacuum cleaner, the next coffee machine. I was living up to this dream of inventing stuff. But slowly I also started to realize I'm designing my own future to pieces. It was yet another coffee machine or just another smartphone. I came here to invent stuff, but not to invent more crap. So at the end of my studies, I was faced with a dilemma. I had came to master the skills I so eagerly desired. I was inventing stuff, but I had no way to make it useful. And that's when I knew I had to make a shift. So I started to volunteer. It was with the Precious Plastic Project, and it was this group of 5 young guys trying to find down-to-earth solutions for plastic pollution. Because isn't it a fascinating material, plastic? It made it possible for us to go to the moon. It keeps you alive in the hospital. And we can safely transport the most harmful chemicals. By now, it's literally everywhere around us. But it also ends up everywhere around us. And it stays around for hundreds of years. And then it's crazy to think that the most common use of plastic is packaging, which is discarded within an hour after usage. All of our consumption currently results in a truckload of plastic entering nature every second. And that's crazy. Because we could recycle all of this plastic, we could lower our dependency on fossil fuels, and we could start cleaning the environment. So how is it then that these group of 5 are gonna solve the plastic pollution problem? Well, when we were standing on Tilafushi, on this garbage island, on this enormous pile of trash, we realized we won't. we will not solve the complete plastic pollution problem. And that made me realize, when I was younger, I loved to be alone. I loved to invent stuff, but the size of this problem, the complexness of this problem, it made me realize that this is so similar to these school projects. And only if we start to work together, then we can actually meet this very real deadline called the climate crisis. So how can these big, complex problems be solved? If it isn't a single person that is a hero that wears a cape that solves the complete problem, if it isn't the group of 5 I just showed, then who is? Well, maybe it's companies, right? They have many employees, they can do big investments. They could surely solve this plastic pollution problem. But then again, in the past, during the COVID pandemic, you could see how fragile their supply chains are. Or even before that, you could see them have a patent war around the exact curvature of a smartphone. It wasn't really solving these big problems. So if it isn't an individual, if it's not the 5 of us, if it's not companies, then who else? Well, maybe it's governments, right? Governments, they can make laws, they can make legislation. They could surely solve it. But also there, in the past, we've seen that many Western countries, including the Netherlands, have exported our own waste to developing countries. Because we had no idea what to do with our own waste, let alone the whole plastic pollution problem. So I also don't think that companies or governments can solve the complete problem. So it's not a single person, it's not companies, it's not governments. I have the feeling there's only one entity sort of left that could potentially solve this. Any ideas? I think it's us, mankind in general. But how the hell does something that work? Is there a phone number you can call and say, I would like you to work on this problem? Is there a post box where you can file an issue and say, please work on this complex problem? Because there are enough experts in the world, even in this room. You guys can solve you can have solutions for problems that we never knew existed. But somehow everybody is working on their own little island. Everybody is tied to a company, tied to a region, tied to a government. There's many of these restrictions. So is it even possible to crowd solve these problems? Well, yes, I think it's possible. I think it's actually already happening. You just need to know where to look. And I would love to show you some of these examples. For example, the group of 5 of precious plastic, it now turned into a group of 100 people from different parts around the world, creating new solutions for plastic recycling. And this now resulted in hundreds of places around the world where people have started themselves building plastic recycling machines and starting to fight plastic pollution locally. And also you can see changes in universities. When I was studying, a professor told me he could not share his input because it would harm the relationship with industry. But nowadays you see universities having open science programs. They help researchers, students, everyone to do open, transparent, reproducible research. And this has resulted into hundreds of thousands of papers now free, openly available for everyone to read. And even within governments, you can see a change. They have seen the rise of open source software, and they started to implement it in, for example, energy usage prediction. And that is already affecting millions of people. And alongside with open source software, you could also see the rise of open source hardware, with the example I just gave with precious plastic, but also, for example, during the pandemic, when there were no more ventilators, because the commercial versions were sold out, the supply chains collapsed, people started to build their own ventilators from locally sourced materials. And what they did is they tried to document all of this, to share this around how other people around the world could build their own ventilators, bringing actual, tangible solutions for everyone to read, to build upon. And this was only possible because different people from diverse backgrounds came to chip in with their skills and to help out. And when I saw the impact what open source hardware could have on the world, I became committed to also apply it to my own projects. For example, with the plastic scanner. The plastic scanner is a device to easily identify different types of plastic in order to enable plastic recycling. And from the beginning on, I knew I could never develop every little aspect of the plastic scanner. I needed the help of experts to chip in with their skills on electronics or on the spectroscopy. And the only way to make that possible is if the plastic scanner does not belong to me, and if it does not belong to a single patent, but it should belong to you, to the people of Tilafushi that can use it in their process, to mankind in general. That's the only way in order to have successful open source hardware projects where people together solve complex problems. And I can see a future where many more people are putting their efforts in the commons, the shared space in the world that is for everyone, but belongs to no one. And maybe you can already see that in your own streets. You have these mini libraries where you can take a book and later on you can put a book back. Or in your neighborhood where there are these community gardens where people maintain it themselves just to make the world a little bit better. So if you are really an expert into something, or if you really nerd out on some specific topic, have a look and see if there is a way to share this in some sort of way. Because I believe that sharing knowledge is one of the most sustainable things you can do. So thank you for listening, but most of all, thank you for sharing on behalf of mankind.